The generation that spent their preteen years roughly between Star Trek and Star Wars might be nostalgic for a number of very strange things, like bell-bottom jeans and avocado-colored appliances. But while our telephones were tethered to the wall, we did enjoy some amenities that a modern child might not even recognize. For example, if your family was sojourning on the summer vacation in the station wagon, you might be lucky enough to stop at a road motel where you could purchase a bit of magic for the low, low price of 2 bits. The curious device, called Magic Fingers, is more than a nostalgic childhood memory or just a piece of 70s kitsch. The idea is much older than you might have thought, and the science is surprisingly sound. As the late, great Jimmy Buffett put it, put in a quarter, turn out the light. Magic Fingers makes you feel all right. The use of vibration therapy to treat a number of conditions is quite old. Health Europa explains that the ancient Greeks discovered activity and vibrations aided recovery from injury. Special carts with irregular wheels aimed to speed healing were mentioned by Lucius Annaeus Seneca in his writings. These were often run over uneven ground to increase the level of vibration and speed up the healing process. Dr. M.L.H. Arnold Snow described another method used by ancient Greeks in his 1904 book, Mechanical Vibration and Its Therapeutic Application. By wrapping one end of a saw in cotton fabric and applying it to the part to be treated, while on the uncovered part of the saw a piece of wood was sawed, thus mechanical vibration was transmitted to the part requiring treatment. Snow also cites a 16th century Japanese work called Sai Tu Hui that lists rigid muscles, spasmodic contractions, relief of rheumatic pains, and after the union of fractures as conditions amenable to mechanical vibration treatment. While the value of what is today generally called whole-body vibration therapy was recognized in antiquity, of course methods of mechanical vibration were somewhat limited in the pre-industrial age, with Snow mentioning, for example, a 17th century work that prescribed flagellation, percussion, and slapping. But technological developments offered better alternatives. In the 19th century, French doctor Jean-Martin Charcot developed a vibrating chair for the treatment of patients with Parkinson's disease. The chair, described in a 2017 edition of the journal European Neurology as a special mechanism that imparts rapid oscillatory movements around an anterior lateral axis, was powered by gas, steam, or electricity. Charcot's inspiration is one that has inspired vibration therapy throughout the ages. The Journal of Neurology notes in 2009 that he developed a vibration chair for patients with Parkinson's disease after he observed that patients were more comfortable and slept better after a train or carriage ride. While he reported improvements in his patients, he died before more thorough testing of the therapy could be done, and his vibration treatment was not continued. Numerous scientists and physicians experimented with different kinds of mechanical vibration devices for various conditions, but vibration therapy began to be seen as contributing to general health as well as a specific therapeutic treatment. Swedish physician Dr. Jonas Gustaf Wilhelm Zander invented a number of machines for physical therapy that utilized different methods of providing mechanical resistance that were precursors of many modern gym machines. But he also recognized the value of vibration, and among his inventions was the Zander Apparat F2, which mimicked the vibration of riding on a horse. The fitness website Sidekick writes that he tested it on his patients and noted that his device helped stimulate weight loss and contributed to muscle gain. Zander's device had an impact on a legendary figure in the field of health, Dr. John Harvey Kellogg. The website Biographics explains that Kellogg did not aspire to be a doctor in the traditional sense. Instead of treating illness, he wanted to help prevent it. Many of his treatments were decidedly non-traditional, including specific attitudes about diet. While it was his younger brother Will who would create the eponymous company, it was Dr. John who pioneered the idea of healthy grain breakfast cereals. The Kellogg brothers turned a facility called the Western Health Reform Institute into the Battle Creek Sanitarium, which Biographic describes as part resort, part medical facility, and part retreat for the rich and famous. Outfitted with all the equipment he could possibly need to get patients in tip-top shape, the sanitarium drew famous guests such as Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, John D. Rockefeller, Warren Harding, Booker T. Washington, Sojourner Truth, and Amelia Earhart. However, the good doctor's treatments were not exactly traditional, including, Biographic writes, the Sanctum Sanctorium, which was filled with, and yes, this was a real thing, enema machines. Each machine was capable of pumping 15 quarts of water, you know where, in just a single minute. If there's anything that will encourage you to reach for a high-fiber cereal, it's that. But a rear end was not the only route that the doctor used to cleanse the body of toxins. He used light therapy and mild electrical currents, which, Biographic explains, were applied with the help of a device he made himself from a telephone. And not surprisingly, he also applied the ancient therapy of mechanical vibration. Biographics explains, the sanitarium was filled with devices that would shake, vibrate, slap, and even beat patients to various ends. Some were designed to stimulate the bowels, others were thought to help improve circulation. Health Europa writes, Kellogg invented vibrating chairs, bars, and platforms and used them in his Battle Creek Sanitarium for therapeutic measures. The first generation was steam-powered, could deliver whole-body vibration therapy to up to 5 individuals. Among his devices was an improved version of Xander's Xanderapparat, a mechanical horse that gained a particularly noteworthy fan. The Daily Hampshire Gazette reported in 2018. Thunderbolt was a gift to President Calvin Coolidge from his college classmate Dwight Morrow, who presented it to his friend after the president, who loved to ride real horses, was prevented from doing so by the Secret Service that was concerned about his safety in the increasingly urban Washington area. The Washington Post wrote in 2018 that newspaper readers learned that Coolidge rode 3 times a day, first thing in the morning, just after lunch, and when his work was finished. The electric horse was good for the liver and could help its rider lose weight, Coolidge's doctor asserted. Although a 1927 edition of the Indianapolis Times noted that the Prince of Wales had a mechanical camel that was, experts say, much better than Coolidge's mechanical horse. In 1938, the United Press reported that what had become called Cal's Hoss had been moved to a gymnasium in Washington where it was shaking the fat off a lot of new dealers. Some of the biggest men in Washington ride Cal's Hoss regularly, Professor E.O. Peterson, proprietor of the club, told the UP. They are enthusiastic about it. Given the application of vibration therapy to everything from broken bones to weight loss to stimulating the bowels, it's not a surprise that there's a long history of applying vibration to sleep. The New York Times reported in 2009. The earliest vibrating beds predated the Industrial Revolution and were powered by household servants. Then came steam power, and after that, electricity. It isn't clear exactly who had the idea of a vibrating bed that would show up in a hotel room, but in 1951, an electrical engineer named John V. Henderson patented what he called a reciprocating bed. A 1950 edition of the Birmingham, Alabama News explains that Henderson's inspiration came 30 years previously, after the birth of their first child left Mrs. Henderson unable to leave her bed. Doctors instructed the young husband that he must continually massage his wife's back if he'd ever want her to be well again, the news explains. I was in the Navy, Henderson told the news. Uncle Sam would not permit me to remain on perpetual leave just to massage my wife's back. The distraught husband got the idea that if the bed vibrated, it would solve the problem. He bought all kinds of electric vibrators and attached them to the bed, but none would work. In time, Mrs. Henderson recovered and was on her feet again, and the idea of a vibrating bed remained an idea. But, the news reports, a year ago, while in a Huntsville hotel, the idea came back. Mr. Henderson was on his way back from a business trip, and suddenly he says, there it was. I'm sure the good Lord pointed it out to me. After much tinkering, Henderson designed a bed that, the Associated Press reported, is operated by a small electric motor connected with an off-center pulley. Henderson, an engineer, the Associated Press wrote, makes no claims for his souped-up bed, but has a standing invitation to doubting Thomases to take a nap in it. A reporter from the Birmingham News tied the apparatus. You close your eyes, you try to think, but you can't. You wonder about the picture you'll take, but you don't care. How strange that all the problems of the little world about you suddenly seem so unimportant. Somewhere far off, there's the click of a switch. The bed has stopped vibrating, and the feeling you have is that you are floating off on air, and all you want to do is sleep, and sleep, and sleep. The news cites examples of a neighbor's wife who is now able to relax and sleep peacefully for the first time in years, and a doctor's wife whose high pulse was knocked down to 25 points. As well as Mrs. Henderson, who told the paper, I'm a very nervous person. Nothing has been able to quiet my nerves. The bed is doing it now. It is just a wonderful sleep stimulant. And all that sounds pretty good, but the vibrating bed did have its issues. Enter Mr. John Joseph Hufftelling. Born on November 14th, 1916, in Kansas City, Missouri, the New York Times reported in 2009 that Hufftelling held a series of jobs, among them hotel bellman, cookware salesman, and a salesman of a remote-control lawnmower. Hufftelling served in the Army Air Corps in World War II, where he flew 20 missions, and was recalled to service again during the Korean War. The Los Angeles Times reports that in 1958, Hufftailing devised the Magic Fingers machines after he was hired to sell a combination mattress and box spring with a pre-installed vibrating mechanism. The beds didn't sell very well and were far too expensive, but he thought he saw a way to shake quarters out of motel guests. The New York Times explained in 1963, making a better mousetrap, that is, product, isn't the only way to stir up new and significant business. Another way is to take what is usually an expensive item, strip away the frills and unnecessary attachments, and sell it at a greatly reduced price and a nice profit. The idea of a vibrating chair or bed is not new, the Time writes. The price, however, has precluded sales on a mass basis. A bed in which a vibrator is an integrated part retails for up to $1,000, depending on how elaborate the entire sleeping unit is. Instead, Hufttailing's company manufactured devices that are attached to a bed or chair springs and spread vibrations uniformly through a surface area. By manufacturing just the device and letting consumers attach it to their own chair or bed, the Times reports that Magic Fingers consumer units were priced at just $39.95. Hufftailing told the Times, "I used to sell the entire vibrating bed. One day I made a service call on a bulky bed, and after ripping away the frills, I found out that it was the vibrator that counted, not the bed. Magic Fingers was born then and there." Hufftailing patented his vibrator on May 22, 1962. Magic Fingers are sold through franchise dealers to institutional clients such as hotels and beauty salons. The devices could be bought or leased. The Los Angeles Times explains, by feeding a quarter into a machine, motel guests could purchase about 15 minutes of shaking, a curious luxury that surely enticed children traveling with their parents, said Ed Watkins, editor of Lodging Hospitality magazine. It was probably the first guest room amenity after the TV, and almost ubiquitous in motels in the 1960s and into the 1970s, Watkins told the Times on Friday. The New York Times explained that while the vibrators offer a pleasing sensation similar to weightlessness, no special medical or therapeutic value is claimed. It is said, though, that they are of aid in getting to sleep. While the Times wrote in 2009 that Magic Fingers combined the thrill of a carnival ride with the pleasure of what could be accomplished, sleeping or waking on a motel bed, for making no claim to therapeutic value, the Lincoln, Nebraska Star-Journal wrote in 1978 that the state revenue department ruled Friday that the beds are not mechanical jukeboxes and pinball machines, which are subject to a $15 annual state license fee. Instead, Tax Commissioner Bill Peters told the paper, the primary use of a vibrating bed is therapeutic and not as a game, contest, or amusement. The article, headlined "Vibrating Beds in Motel Rooms Are Not for Fun," noted the spokesman aloud, however, that the ruling is potentially humorous. The New York Times reported in 1963 that sales of Magic Fingers have risen from less than $100,000 in 1960, through the first full year of operation, to more than $1 million last year. Based on a 200% increase in sales since last May, Magic Fingers expects a volume of about $3 million in 1963. American Heritage Magazine reported in 2002 that at the height of their popularity, 250,000 Magic Fingers were in place in hotels across the country. The Miami News reported in 1971, since the firm's been in business 12 years, Hufftailing estimates Magic Fingers easily have been used more than 100 million times. People just like it because it relaxes them. The news continues. Hufftailing calculates 4 quarters a month are used in each of the 250,000 motel rooms carrying Magic Fingers. That's $12 million a year. And some of those quarters were mine. The New York Times noted in 2009, Magic Fingers has insinuated itself into the consciousness of a great many Americans over 40. Columnist Tom Phillips wrote in the Glen Falls New York Post-Star in 1990, summer vacations what meant staying at a roadside motel with a Gideon Bible in the nightstand, a shower cap in the bathroom, and Magic Fingers in the bed. For 2 bits, the bed would buzz, the kids would giggle, and soon another day on the road would be over. Columnist Blake Fontenay wrote in the Stuart, Florida News in 2022, during their heyday in the 1960s and 70s, the vibrating beds were considered prized amenities across the country, along with color televisions and heated pools. For a meager price of $1.25, the bed promised a quarter hour of tingling relaxation and ease. As a kid growing up during that era, I viewed those vibrating beds as the height of luxury. Although not everyone was a fan. Toronto Star columnist Joy Slinger wrote in 1983, sure, you can quote statistics that on a per-night slept basis, Magic Fingers is among the safest ways to go Betty buys. But what if my number happens to be up the night I put a quarter in the slot? Machines have been known to go berserk. You see it in the paper all the time. Machine goes to berserk. Kills man. It is a risk I prefer not to take. But the magic time was brief. The Palm Beach Post wrote in 2002, the short, happy reign of magic fingers came to a close in the late 1970s, done in by changes in the hospitality industry, vandalism, and growing association with the seedier side of life. The New York Times noted in 2009, by the early 1980s, magic fingers had begun to fall out of favor with hotel owners. By the standards of the late 20th century in-room entertainment, the device seemed quaint. Phillips observed that somewhere during the evolution of America's travel habits, magic fingers started to lose their grip on the vacationing public. One by one, motels dropped the devices. These days, even some motel industry officials raised their eyebrows at the term. Bill Pullen, a general manager and vice president of operations for Holiday Inn on Hutchinson Island, told the Palm Beach Post, a typical Holiday Inn is an upgraded product from a Holiday Inn 30 years ago. Now you don't sell a room for $100 and ask them to put a quarter in a machine in their room. The Palm Beach Post reported that Hufftailing sold the company in 1980. In 2002, the Palm Beach Post wrote that the 86-year-old Hufftailing was living on a 51-foot boat named Magic Fingers in the Fort Pierce Marina. But even today, he hears from past users on his creation who have stories to tell him about magic fingers. The Post wrote, one couple told him that their magic fingers didn't work at their California hotel, so they went to sleep and forgot about it. And in the middle of the night, it suddenly came on, and the couple thought they were in an earthquake. Hufftailing told the Post, people would also say, you owe me a quarter, it didn't work. I always had to carry a handful of quarters. Sadly, the magic fingers was lost in Hurricane Francis in 2004. The Stuart News reported in 2022. John Hufftailing remained in Fort Pierce after losing his boat, living in a couple of places, before dying of a brain hemorrhage in 2009. Fontenay noted ironically that the mayor of Fort Pierce told him in 2022 that she had never heard of him. Hufftailing died the same year as singer Michael Jackson and politician Ted Kennedy, he writes, although the inventor's passing drew considerably less attention. However, in perhaps the greatest honor to his memory, his son Paul told the New York Times that most of Mr. Hufttailing's children have magic fingers in their homes. And while he, and for the most part hotel rooms with his invention, are a thing of the past, the memories of his magic live on. ABC News wrote, while noting his passing in 2009, kitschy and titillating, magic fingers remained a staple of American pop culture even after the device began disappearing from motels. The vibrations triggered a beer explosion in the movie Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and FBI agents Mulder and Scully relaxed to the pulsations in an episode of The X-Files. Fox News Channel's Brit Hume sang the Buffett lyric to former President George W. Bush and his father in a January interview when they mentioned a vibrating chair in the Oval Office. For never claiming any therapeutic effects, Hufftailing was certainly on the right track. A 2017 edition of the Journal of Healthcare Engineering notes that in the running of cars and trains, passengers often feel sleepy, and if a machine can reproduce that phenomenon, then it is possible to induce a patient, like an insomnia patient or an infant, to sleep with no ill side effects. The article concludes that the study results show that effective vibration can induce sleep. And isn't that worth a quarter? So today you can buy a unit for your home from magicfingers.us for about $80, and there are still a few hotel rooms out there that have units, mostly boutique hotels that are selling a vintage experience. But if you happen to have encountered a working Magic Fingers machine lately, then feel free to tell us when and where in the comments. I hope you enjoyed watching this episode of The History Guy, and if you did, please feel free to like and subscribe and share The History Guy with your friends. And if you also believe that history deserves to be remembered, then you can support The History Guy as a member on YouTube, a supporter on our community at Locals, or as a patron on Patreon. You can also check out our great merchandise shop or book a special message from The History Guy on Cameo.